Welcome to Laptop Chat. Tonight's topic will be the Phoenix Lights. Your host tonight is myself, Cohen Luke 74. And on March 13th, 1997 was one of the biggest sightings of UFOs in America. Thousands of people claim to see something over the Phoenix skies, as well as the rest of Arizona and some parts of Nevada. So roughly at 7:55 in the evening in Henderson, Arizona, people claim to see lights in the sky. 6 lights, uniform, in a V shape. This would continue on for most of the evening, and the pinnacle would be over Phoenix, Arizona, one of the most populous cities in Arizona. And it wasn't just one or two people who saw these lights, this craft, or whatever it was. It was thousands. It was police officers. It was pilots. It was lawyers. It was fast food people. It was people during a football game. This event happened all over Arizona. It's not in Phoenix, like I said, and it was on the news the next day everywhere. It was world news. Nobody knew what it was. And some of the guests in hotels seen it, and some claim that it blocked out the stars as it went over. It has been said this craft was at least a mile wide, if not more. We have nothing that big in our military. We have nothing that big in civilian for that capability. I'm not really sure we could do that at this time, to be honest, even though it happened almost 20 years ago. And you have all kinds of reports, of course, when you have a big UFO sighting, what people saw, and people say the lights went on, the lights went off at times. Some people claim to see that there was, in fact, windows at the bottom of this craft, and they saw humanoid creatures. There's only a few reports of that, not that many at all. But the thing is, though, about the sighting is, it didn't happen just in Phoenix. It happened everywhere in Arizona and some parts of Nevada. And of course, this is tried to be explained away by the military with flares, and last time I checked, flares don't travel from city to city. They flicker, and they don't travel in one motion. In my opinion, there's 2 sightings that night. The sightings of the UFO in question, and the sightings of flares, the cover-up the military tried to do to make it seem like they're the ones doing it. And the fascinating thing is the flares didn't happen until like 10 o'clock at night. And the first sightings happened at 8 o'clock. So you figure it out. And the most interesting thing about this is the next day, after this happened, where the governor came forward, said, we're going to look into this. We're going to find out what's going on here. And an unscheduled briefing happened a couple hours later on, and he said, we found out the culprit. And comes walking in with a gray alien face mask on with one of his staff, mocking it, basically joking about it. And you have to wonder, why was he so serious at first, and hours later he has this briefing, as you call it, with mocking it, basically. Was he under pressure to do this? And the thing that gets me, though, is many years later, he admitted that it was real, and he saw it himself. And his words were exactly this. It was something not of this world, something I've never seen before. So why the cover-up then? Why the heck would you come forward, say you're going to find the truth out, and hours later you may mock it with have your staff come out with a gray face mask on? It makes no sense at all. People are pissed off because a lot of people saw this craft in the sky. A lot of people saw it. It was on the national news. I remember that as a kid, growing up. Not as a kid, though. I was over 18, though. But I turned on the news and, what the hell is this? There's a mass sighting of a UFO. It's not some small UFO either. This thing's like the size of a mothership. Miles long. We have nothing in our military that big. Nothing, folks. Boggles my mind. It's the most fascinating UFO story next to Roswell and Red Shining Forest. This was seen by thousands of people in many cities. It blocked out the stars. And there's more to the story too, and they'll never admit to it. The military launched 2 F-16s at it, see what was going on. The story I'm talking about now, very few people know about. And as they chased it, the thing took off fast. Something that big taking off that fast? We don't have capability at all. Not at all. And here's the kicker. One of the pilots came forward on the radio station, and after he did that, he was shipped off elsewhere. Never be heard from again. So obviously the military is trying to cover this up. They did flares, obviously, after the fact, saying, oh, we were testing flares in the area. Okay, you're testing flares all across Arizona? No shit. Let's spend a lot of money on flares then. These flares, like I said, they didn't flicker, so-called flares, and they moved in a uniform fashion. Flares don't do that, folks. What we have here is a military cover-up, basically. It didn't work out too well. So what do you make of this? I mean, we all heard about it. We were there. I mean, watching the news when it happened. You saw the Phoenix lights. People came forward. They said, we know what flares look like. Those are not flares. You know? They know what they saw. They saw an outground that the ship was basically in a V shape. You know, almost like stealth, not really a stealth at all. So what was this thing? Was it a military craft? Test model? That's a mile wide? I don't think so, in my opinion. Was it flares? No, flares don't act that way. A UFO? Unidentified flying object, maybe of alien origin? Perhaps. But like I said, it wasn't one or two people seeing this thing, reporting it in. It was thousands of people. All over the national news. They made movies about this thing. A horror movie actually called Night Skies. Check it out. It's really freaky, and I wouldn't watch it late at night. It's probably scare the shit out of you, basically. So it's based on the Phoenix Lights, where Phoenix Lights also abducted people, and it's total fiction, obviously, though. But I mean, it's good. It's good for if you're bored at night. Snow geese, yes, snow geese with flashlights attached to their wings. Very good, Scarlet. Stealth drone flying formation. Yeah, but the drones only go so far. Liberty just went all over across the state, and in Nevada too. I mean, this has been the source of many books, and as my friend Shane said, there's 2 more sightings in the future too, in the same area. And Scarlett says they blame the 1952 flyover D.C. as a duck flying formation. Oh yeah, that's the Washington thing that scared the shit out of the Pentagon and the military too. They went after those UFOs, by the way, in Washington. They took off faster than anything they ever seen, and they came back again. They were toying with them, basically. They have it good for a show in the future, by the way, too. Thanks, by the way. But this governor, though, it puzzles me about him. He wants the truth at first. He comes out all serious. And I guess people who know him, I say he's a serious guy. He doesn't really joke around. He never joked around too much at all. And maybe got pressure from a phone call from maybe the military or the government saying, hey, I want you to discredit this. I want you to have another press conference. I'm not scheduled. Come out. Make a mockery of it. So, like I said, he had his staff member come out with a gray uniform on and joke around, whatever. We found it. We found the culprit, and people weren't amused, folks. I remember that in the news. People were pissed off, like I said, because you had cops come forward and say they saw something in the sky. I mean, it was huge. It was big. You know, it was 6 lights in the sky, and if you look closely, it was in the formation of a V-shaped craft. Not stealth-like at all. Something I'd never seen before, to be honest. It wasn't stars in the sky moving. It wasn't weather balloons. It wasn't swamp gas. As the governor said years later when he was asked about this, It was like something not of this earth. The governor, folks. This isn't some bum, bum off the street. This isn't some guy at a gas station pumping your gas. It's the governor. And he was asked, why did you make a mockery of it? And he said he was some pressure was put on him by an unknown source he didn't want to mention. But what if this was one of our aircrafts that we were flying up and perhaps preparing the people for disclosure? It can be a mock event, basically. But the biggest planes we have is the B-52 bomber, and a little bit bigger than that, though. Nothing that's a mile wide. Do you know any planes that are a mile wide in any military across the world? Anyone? I don't. James said the government several years later called the lights otherworldly after admitting he saw a similar UFO. Very true. James, would you like to mic up and talk about this a little bit?
Sure. You guys can all hear me, right? Well, what gets me is that in the space of about 300 miles from the Nevada line through Phoenix and the edge of Tucson, people saw this. They saw these lights, and later on the Air Force identified it as flares being dropped by a A-10 fighter. Training exercises from Barry Goldwater Range in southwest Arizona. But they described the second group of lights as this. Now, there's no explanation to the first. What gets me is that why were they, doing training exercises with flares to begin with a fighter jet? If those lights had been seen before and they had scrambled aircraft, why did they have the need to drop flares? So that's a question that is a bit strange to me. Usually when you drop flares, you're doing it to prevent getting shot by another aircraft. But this is pretty crazy that it's been seen over the years in 2013 as well as 2015, and in 97 it was big news. I don't recall hearing about anything in 2013 or 2015, but they've been seen time and time again on video. It's been filmed, almost identical to what was spotted in 97. And it's the same strange coincidence where, the altitude of the lights are all the same, and they just slowly fade away. What I have to say about it there.
As you all know, I bring the woo. It's time for our woo segment of the show. Now, these lights have been seen before years earlier, and this is the woo part. There's cave paintings of these aircraft in the mountains of Arizona and then some of the rock formations. So not only has this happened in previous years, it's happened way in the past too. Oh, that's nice, Lexi. Phoenix is along the 33rd parallel line. Nice. But yeah, there's cave paintings of Indians who've seen these craft, the V-shaped craft before. It happened way in the past. And one thing James told me earlier in the show was, but before the show, was that these sightings happen at the same time of the year, like in March or April, in the springtime. Why would that be? That's fascinating. Coincidence? So interesting, this whole case, man. I mean, this is the biggest UFO case probably of all time next to Roswell. Most cited UFO in the history of modern man. Thousands of people seen it. Then it was all over the national news. Talk shows galore on it. There was a 2-hour I've heard in the past. It was very fascinating. And now we have a special speaker going to talk about the Phoenix Lights and his opinion on it, Mr. Adam Icarus. Please mic up and let me know what you think about this. Oh, he's adjusting his mic. We will continue on with the show. And you're currently listening to a Biased Propaganda Network on LOP, Lunatic Outpost. We're currently hosting the show in Lunatic Outpost, and we appreciate you listening on. So let me ask you this, Room. What do you think about this? You have people from various careers, and even the government coming forward saying they've seen something in the sky. You have two military aircraft who, unofficially, of course, unofficially, and one of the pilots came forward on the radio station and talked about it, and the next day, he was gone. He transferred him somewhere else really far away, basically. And here's the kicker, too. People in the air tower saw this thing in the sky. And guess what? It was nowhere on the radar at all. Radar did not pick it up one bit. Something, huh? How would you cover this up? I mean, obviously it's a mile wide. You can't really shoot it down because it crashes here and take out part of the city, basically. So what do? Oh, we'll get some planes up there, drop some flares. Don't blame on flares then. Well, of course, people aren't stupid. Well, most people aren't stupid. These sightings happened before 8 o'clock p.m. The flares were dropped at 10 o'clock p.m. There's a big gap there, okay? A real big gap. How do you explain that one away? You can't, basically. And the craft wasn't flying really fast away. It was flying over the cities, slow. Like it was checking us out, kind of. So this is a big-ass, probably maybe alien craft, maybe a mothership, checking out humanity, basically, over in Arizona. Probably doing scans and stuff. I mean, if you think we're the only ones in the universe after this, you're stupid, in my opinion. I mean, it wasn't a small UFO either. It was, like I said, it was the size of a mothership. A mile wide, if not longer. And people were out there. There's some cameras and stuff back then, but I mean, it's nothing like today's technology where you hold your cell phone up. We didn't have that back then. There's pictures out there. There's videotape out there of this. People were outside just staring at it, all basically. Some were scared. And one of the pilot's reaction is he was terrified afterwards. He was shaken because he went underneath these lights. He found out they weren't lights at all. They were a big-ass craft, okay, in his own words. And he flew back, obviously. I mean, this thing didn't budge at all. Not the first time around. The second pass, it took off really fast. So how do you cover this up other than, drop flares and you have a moron governor who makes fun of it basically the next day? And people still believe in this. I mean, they tried their damnedest to discredit this sighting, and they couldn't do it. And Arizona's no secret to there's military bases around the area, and there's been UFO sightings around there before. And now Mr. Chains has something he wishes to say in the Chains.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that out of all the witnesses, Frances Barwood, a city councilwoman who launched an investigation into the event, said that 700 witnesses she interviewed, the government never interviewed even one. And that kind of leads me to believe that the government, or the military at the time, knew what was going on. And you could tie that into the fact that, yeah, they had to send out a fighter, an A-10 Warthog aircraft. They had to release flares in the sky after the first sighting of it to get a story behind it, for them to get to cover it up in a way. And that makes me believe that the military knew what was going on, and that they couldn't say anything to us, to the public. They couldn't let us know what was going on. And the fact that, yeah, like you mentioned, it's many football fields wide, these sightings, what had happened in the sky. You can't release flares all at the same time and at the same altitude and have no altitude change in that. So the fact that this has been cited year after year, it seems, not every time on video, but when we do see it on video, it appears to be the same exact shape, V shape, and lights, and it's pretty amazing. that it happens in around the springtime, as you mentioned, from February to April, and wondering if it'll happen again. Will it?
We can only hope, Rick. I mean, I would love for this happening over like Cleveland or someplace so I could see it myself. you know, yeah, we have beautiful sightings everywhere in the world, all every year, but nothing this big. Only time something this big was seen was over in Alaska one time. It was like walnut shaped, and it was reported by passenger aircraft. It was seen on the radar. It was seen by people. It was one of the biggest UFO sightings next to this one. I mean, and that thing was chasing a plane, actually, playing games with it, more or less. It was kind of scary for the pilot. Next up for our talking points will be Mr. Adam Icarus. Go ahead, Adam.
Hi, Cool and Luke. How you doing?
Doing good, Adam. What do you think about this sighting, the Phoenix Lights? Do you believe in this stuff? I mean, do you think it was military? Do you think it was a UFO? Do you think it was flares? I mean, what's your opinion on this?
I don't have enough information to say it, but I think it was UFO.
I tend to believe too myself because we have nothing this big in our military. I mean, even our secret stealth planes and our Aurora's not this big at all. And I don't buy the flare theory because flares flicker, they give off smoke, they don't move in a uniform fashion, they drop. These stay at the same level basically. It was an aircraft of some kind. My guess, of course, I'm a conspiracy theorist to the core. I do believe it was an alien craft. I do believe it was a mothership. And something that I was reading too, that some people claim they saw two smaller craft come from this one. Interesting, isn't it? Why not? It's that big. And you have, of course, reports of two people seeing like a glass underside of it with humanoid creatures looking down at them. High Power asked a question in the room, LOP chat room. Who in here has personally seen a UFO in real life? I have. I'll admit that. My experience was a little different than this one here. I mean, it wasn't this big, obviously, but I was driving home, my girlfriend at the time, and I seen this craft fly overhead. It was flying really low, okay, like over treetop level, which you're not allowed to do. That's against the FAA regulations. I heard no sound from it, so I stopped my car in the middle of the road, like an idiot, and I got out, and I was looking at this thing. No sound. Even the one that thinks had no sound, too. So a big old mile-wide craft had no sound. This one had no sound, too. Mine was triangle shaped with, like, blue and green lights, and it was flying over the city, and it was shining a spotlight on the ground for a little bit. Then it took off. I know no aircraft that was silent at the time. This is back in probably 1995, 2 years before the Phoenix Lights, and that low to the ground. I mean, I was in awe, basically. I mean, we have sightings before in Rockford, where I'm from. I mean, it's not really a hot spot, though, but it happens from time to time. Adam Icarus says he's seen two UFOs in his past. High Power says they've seen one when I was younger in Mexico. I mean, we all seen something weird in the sky, obviously, and it was just you or me or somebody else, but over in Phoenix, it was thousands of people. Thousands. Incredible people. Lawyers. The governor. Some military personnel. I mean, you have people from every single career group basically seen this thing. Including the mayor of the Phoenix too. I mean, go Google Phoenix Light sometime. It's fascinating. You have pictures of it. I mean, a V-shaped formation. I mean, when they drop flares, it's usually in a straight line. Let's be honest here, okay? It wasn't a flare thing. It was a shitty job of a cover-up, basically, and most people weren't buying it. And Mr. Chains has more information on these flares. Go ahead, Mr. Chains.
This I've just got a good point about the military saying that it was flares. Now, no military in their sane mind would drop flares over a city. And if they were flares that were parachute flares, they wouldn't risk dropping those over a city for a training exercise. exercise. They do that out in the desert. Now, that proves to me more that they're lying, and that, and like you said, everybody saw the video, the pictures. No flares dropped to the ground. They disappeared. And even if they had dropped them and the flares went out, they wouldn't risk any potential damage to buildings or any homes in the cities. And if they were parachute flares and they dropped to the ground and didn't burn anything, somebody would have eventually found one of those flares, and that would prove the theory that it was flares, but nobody did, and nothing came to the ground. So,
very good point. And is it kind of dangerous to flares over a major city, a desert city, basically? They can catch on fire real easily. Yeah, kind of like the government's joke pissed me off. Yeah, it pissed a lot of people off, to be honest. I mean, why the heck would you, like I said before, come out with a press conference saying, I'm going to get the truth. And hours later, unscheduled press conference, mock it basically with your staff member coming out with an alien mask on, and joking and laughing. And this guy is not known for joking and laughing. He's a really serious guy. All of his staff members and friends said that, basically. And Supertramp has a question in the room. I'm going to read it real quick. The Seashell think there's a connection between the Hale-Bopp comet, the Sheffield UFO crash, the Arizona Lights, and Heaven's Gate. All was occurred within 2 weeks' time span. Ooh, that's good. I actually seen Hale-Bopp with my naked eyes. I was driving to work one day, and I pulled over in the cornfield and I watched the Hale-Bopp comet. It was beautiful. It was one of the rare ones you can see with your naked eye. Haha, Liberty. But as for connection, I think the Heaven's Gate people were just nuts, basically, and they were basing the Hale-Bopp comet. And we all know they didn't transition on to the next, dimension or in a UFO. They all died from mass suicide, and that was a shame, basically. But as for the Sheffield crash and the Phoenix Lights, they might be tied, to be honest. Because even after the Phoenix Lights, there's a lot of sightings in the country from everywhere. Nothing as big as the crap they saw. And Scarlet goes, I think the government was trying to quell what they saw with panic. I think so too. People were, this was locals in the national news. I remember seeing it. People were like, hey, what's going on here? Why wasn't the military doing anything about this? Well, derp, it's a mile-wide craft. You can't shoot it down. Or try to shoot it down. If you shoot the thing down, it's going to crash in Phoenix and kill a lot of people. And if it's traveled from the star system to here, I'm pretty sure it's way more advanced and it's probably some kind of defense system on it. I wouldn't be messing with something that can travel the stars. We'd probably lose badly, to be honest. It wasn't doing any harm. It was just checking us out, basically. It wasn't a threat. But still, though, it's in our airspace. What if it was Russian or something, People had a right to be worried. And years later, it's still unsolved. And if you believe the flare thing, I'm sorry, but you're an idiot, You already dispelled the flare thing. Adam Ickerish also has something he wishes to add. Go ahead, Adam.
Or on talk radio. But I saw a UFO a few years ago that my brother and my nephew and my aunt saw. And we were all out on the back porches, and I was smoking. And there was this large UFO that was like a triangle, and it had two. There might have been three, but I saw two. And it may have been a mothership, and it was a triangular shape, and it took about a third of the sky, and it had an airplane beneath it. So I knew it was large. I thought it was in like deep space or something.
That's the thing, too. This wasn't the first sighting of a mothership. You've seen one. They've seen one in Alaska. They've seen one over in Russia before. I mean, if these aren't our craft, which I don't think they are, then where are they from then? I mean, they're not doing harm and all. I mean, if the UFOs are hostile, we've already been attacked or taken over by now. I think they're just curious about us. As many signals as we're giving off, the radio and other stuff, we're giving a lot of attention out there.
Well, the next
And
day,
Stephen Hawking said we should be careful of that.
next day they said they saw the International Space Station that passed over Michigan, and that was on the news. And I couldn't believe it because I knew it wasn't the International Space Station.
They have an excuse for everything, Adam. Try to explain everything away, because they're not ready to disclose it to the public about this. I mean, hey, we've been visited by aliens many times. People would panic. I mean, not so much anymore, though, because they've been slowly introducing this in our society by movies and books and stuff, and shows on TV, so it probably won't come that much of a surprise to us. But I don't think the world's ready for disclosure yet, to be honest. I mean, you have all the church people freaking out. You have a lot of people freaking out. But what do you do then when it's a craft a mile wide that comes flying over your city? There's not much you can do. You can try to cover it up with flares. You can try to cover it up with a governor's story. And they interviewed people on this too, by the way. This is the kicker here. I was reading about this when I was studying for the show. They interviewed 700 people what they saw, right? And on the news, they put the opinion of a little kid. I think it was flares. But the rest of the people they interviewed thought it was an alien ship or a military craft. So they put a kid on there instead. And you don't think the media is working with the government? You're dead wrong. I mean, I'm sure when something like this happens, they get a phone call from the government saying, hey, this is what I want you to say. This is what I don't want you to say, though. Our media is heavily influenced by our government, whether you want to believe it or not. That's not my opinion, it's fact. They've been caught more than a couple times. Now we have Mr. In Chains, who has something else to add to the show. Go ahead, Mr. Chains.
Well, what you're saying about that, it could have been, if it was another country, if it was, would you believe, or would you think that the military would tell us if it was an aircraft from Russia or China? Would they cover it up that, no, it wasn't? Would they panic the American people that they have that technology? Or they cover it up that it was just flares? But another thing that gets me is that if you look at any video of the A-10 Thunderbolt II, or what they call the Hog, the aircraft they had said drop the flares. The flares, they drop parachutes to them, and they dissipate pretty quickly. Not only that, but they scatter. The flare theory is beyond me now. I don't ever spotted in '97, and what you said about that kid doesn't surprise me at all. What they would put on there, but yeah, keep in mind this was almost 20 years ago, and it's been cited time after time since then. So whatever is out there is still out there in the mountains or wherever, and there's not an aircraft carrier or hangar big enough to hide that thing. So where does it come from is the question. Where would you hide that? If it is a spaceship, if it is a UFO, if it's coming from space, then where is it? Where is its hangar? Is the big question.
I have a question for you too, Rick, though. Something this big has no sound. It doesn't make sense. Can you look at these rockets they launch over at Cape Canaveral and over in the West Coast? They make a lot of noise. If this thing is a mile wide, if not longer, then the propulsion system should make a lot of noise too then, am I correct? Something this big should not be silenced at all. And I'm not sure we could do something like that with our technology level. Smaller planes possibly. But something a mile wide would be noisy in my opinion. Look at the B-52 bomber. That's not too quiet. Sorry. Rick, if this is not ours, or if it is ours, what kind of engine would it have to be totally silent, do you think?
I am not quite sure, but you have a point. If there was any aircraft flying by, people would hear it, even if it was, as high as you can get in the sky. Somebody would hear the lay of the jet flying by, even if it was miles and miles and miles away. There was no, no witnesses described any aircraft, jet engines, nothing like that. So that is a good question. What engine would be silent enough people in a city not to hear when what did they say how high up those lights were?
I'm not for sure though, but it was. I know. Supertramp said it's an air balloon. No, it wasn't an air balloon because it took off really fast. When they sent the jets after it, it took off. For something that big taking off that fast, you must have one hell of a propulsion system in there. Maybe an anti-gravity system of some kind, maybe some kind of new technology us civilians don't know about. And Scott says it heard a low humming sound. But even though low humming though, something that big should make a lot of noise though. Something that freaking huge. I enjoyed the story immensely, man, and I did my own research when it came out, and it's like flares. Let me look up flares real quick, what it can do and what it can't do, and I just proved the flares within 5 minutes time. Aircraft hovers too. Yeah, it's hovering in the sky. I mean, keep in mind this is not current day right now. This is over in 1997. Okay, when we didn't have that much technology, when the smartphone wasn't even invented yet. You couldn't take pictures of stuff. I mean, it was barely invented. Hovering, it goes slow at first, and it takes off when it's chased by jet aircraft. The first thing it didn't do shit though. It stood there. Then the second time it passed around, it took off. I'm pretty sure it took out our F-16s easily if it wanted to be honest. But why Arizona though? Why, if you're an alien civilization or you're military, why would you do over a populated area? Especially if you're military. What's the sense of that? That's what I don't understand. Why the location of Phoenix, Arizona? Why the location of Arizona, period? And Nevada? Why not fly over Chicago or New York, Washington, D.C., or L.A.? And Scarlett said to test the reaction of the population, prepare for disclosure possibly. But Scarlett, I don't think this is one of ours, to be honest. We have nothing that big, nothing nearly as big as that, nothing close to that. It's like a flying aircraft carrier, basically. Immense by our standards. So, what was it doing here? Just checking us out? Maybe preparing for an invasion force in the future? Probably not, though, but you never know. And Lexi said, did they do a lot of nuke testing there? Maybe to test how much radiation. Yeah, it's not nuke test over in Arizona. Some of the major tests of our nuke program has been in Arizona in the past. Here near Detroit, Adam says, so Detroit should have seen it. But it was just in one area of the country. It was one state, though. I don't know what to make of this, to be honest. But I know it's one of the biggest UFO cases in the United States history, if not the world history, And supposedly came back again years later. Rick, do you wish to talk about that a little bit, please? And James, are you there?
What was the question again?
Years later, they had other sightings of the same craft. Would you like to talk about that a little bit, please?
Well, yes. In 2013, it wasn't exactly of what was spotted in 1997 from video and pictures that I had seen. It was more of a red orb. But in 2015, they had recorded video. There's multiple instances where it was February to April. They had shown video of what looked like the exact thing they had saw in '97. The same lights, there's this video of a guy recording it driving down the highway, and you can see this thing slowly fade off into the mountains. And what gets me is that after 20 years, the same type of craft that's hovering, the same type of sighting has appeared time and time again. This is 20 years later almost. And the question that gets me, why in between the months of March and April? That's the only time these sightings have ever been seen with this particular 97 looking craft, this V-shaped craft with bigger than a couple football fields. Why around this time? And we're about that, it is February now, it's going to be March next month. And be a sighting or two. Maybe we'll get some new videos in 2016. The one thing that gets me that, and I work with cameras, people don't really have that good quality of this craft, and I understand that. I mean, at night it's tricky to get good video of anything, and the right settings you can get something pretty good on camera at night, but you have to tweak a lot of things, and people don't usually have the time to do that when they see a UFO. But when these cameras we have nowadays, GoPros and whatnot, get more advanced, we're probably going to see something we haven't seen yet. We're going to get a lot better definition of what these crafts are, and I think that's going to be something that's going to change everything. That might give us more answers in the future as more advanced. But Luke, what other have you had any other sightings that you questioned in the sky besides the UFO that you had witnessed before? Have you ever had anything you've questioned before that you just didn't know what it was?
Actually, I did one recently when I moved here. I think it was last year or the year before. I was walking the dogs and I was looking up and I saw these two scar-shaped silver objects in the sky, right? They weren't going straight across the skyline. They were going up, 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 and they disappeared. As far as I know, we don't have any aircraft that can go from the sky into outer space. I mean, I did a double take. Like, I'm watching these things, and they're not going, like most craft, they go like in the arc usually, if they're going somewhere far, or they go straight across the sky. They're usually going straight up in the sky, and they disappeared. My guess would be outer space. And yeah, there's military bases in Ohio where I live, though, but we have nothing like that that can go into space. I mean, you just talk about the Aurora, obviously, though, that is our next generation aircraft that can go into space and come back down again. But not in the area I was at. I mean, this kind of blew my mind. And years earlier, when I was a kid, I had another UFO sighting of an orange craft in the evening time. I mean, I'm familiar with UFOs. I have my own abduction story I've told many times in different forums. So I do believe we're being visited. And Scarlett said she saw the Aurora coming back. Nice. That's supposed to be, top secret craft, doesn't exist. Yeah, bullshit. The stealth technology is about 30 years old. For civilians anyways. I'm sure we had a stealth plane way before that. Everything you see now in the sky is probably about from 30 years ago. So what we have now, technology-wise, probably blow your minds, basically. There's some talk that we have cloaked ships now, too. There's some UFO videos. I mean, there's some YouTube videos that show some planes cloaking sometimes. It was like 5 years ago, it was talked about in some university about a cloaked cloth, where you bend the light rays of it and it appears to be cloaked. So we do have cloaking technology, though, but do we have enough technology to do it around a plane? Possibly. I wouldn't doubt it. I've seen cloaking videos of stuff we did done during the Gulf War, where supposedly soldiers were cloaked and you dropped some grenades inside of a tank. I mean, I'm sure our technology we have now would blow your minds, basically, but where did we get the technology from? 150 years ago, we didn't have shit here, did we? No televisions, no radios, no nothing, no electronics of any kind. And suddenly, we get advanced out of the blue. Some people say we took the Roswell craft that crashed and we reverse engineered it. Got fiber optics, lasers, and other technology from it. But all the time we've been on this planet, suddenly we become advanced out of the blue? No, I don't think so. Something influenced us somehow, some way. Think about it, Rick. Horse and buggy 200 years ago. And now I saw a report we have all personal flying cars pretty soon next year. I got them, they're testing them now. Like the Jetsons. So how do we go from horse and buggy 200 years ago to flying cars very soon? What do you think, Rick?
I believe, in my opinion, we have about 5 billion more minds on the planet. Collectively, we can become a more intelligent race of people. A species that can thrive off of technology now. I think the more people, the better, but the worse as well. Technology has come a long way, but I believe in the last 10, 15 years, we're kind of hitting a speed bump on technology. I mean, people thought we'd have hoverboards and whatnot by now. We kind of do, but it's not what we think it is. And, we talk about hover cars we have for all along. When is that actually going to come? I saw a video the other day of a guy that made a hovercraft out of drone propellers. It was like pretty much a high-powered drone this guy stood on and floated around the lake. Now that's pretty cool, but that's using drone technology to float. Okay, the hover. When are we going to get technology where we? And apparently, right now they're trying to make technology that brings us to Mars in 3 days. Have you heard of that, Luke?
I have heard about it, the technology to do it, though. We have to have a reverse laser to slow down. I mean, you can do laser engine thing, though, but how are you going to slow down in time? And how can the astronauts withstand the G-force of that going to Mars in 3 days? Laser drive system, as Liberty said. It's all in theory right now. It's on the drawing board, but I can see going to Mars in 3 months' time, but not 3 days. How do you slow down and avoid an object that's coming towards you? Like you're trying to avoid a meteorite, you're going that fast. Boom. You hit a meteorite or some kind of object in space going that fast, your craft is going to be crap in no time at all. I mean, I'm glad they're working on different, like, warp drive engine stuff and making it a reality, though, but it's going to take some time to build, though. I mean, I'd love to see us go to Mars before I die. I'd love to see colonies on the Moon and Mars. I'd love to see us travel the stars by warping space. But it's a long time away. Here we have this object in Phoenix, Arizona, 1997. Size of an aircraft carrier, miles wide. And you brought up a good point earlier, Rick. How do you hide this thing? Is there a hangar somewhere that's miles long that you can park this thing at? I mean, it'd be hard to hide. It's led to think that it's not ours, to be honest, because after it went through the Arizona border, it kind of disappeared. Poof, it's gone. There's no hangars near there. So if this is our craft, where would you store it at? Is there any way you could possibly store this thing at? I don't think so. I mean, I would discredit this thing immensely, but thousands of people saw it. Thousands, not hundreds, not 10, not, your neighbor Joe and his inbred wife. It was thousands of people, credible people, who saw this craft in the sky. It's not only in Phoenix, but multiple cities across that state, and some claim to see in Nevada too. And Cryle has something he wishes to add to the show. Go ahead, Cryle.
So, this thing is huge, and you want to know where we could possibly hide it. It's not necessarily something that has to be stored in the size that it ended up being. What about the potential for something that folds out origami style and then assembles itself and then flies around? I mean, I'd love to believe in aliens and that it's a UFO coming down from outer space or under the oceans or something, but what if this is just government craft that we intended to put in place, say, over Afghanistan and just scare the bejesus out of them with our giant flying saucer.
I'm sure you studied the Phoenix Lights before, Cryo. Do you honestly believe it's our craft somehow? I mean, either here's the choices we have here. We know it's not flares. You're intelligent. Flares don't travel in a straight line. They drop after a while. They flicker and they produce smoke. And the videos I've seen, these are not flares. So it narrows it down to either it's an alien craft or something we have ourselves. So in your honest opinion, you're a smart guy, is this our craft? Or do you think it's alien in nature?
You know, if you want my honest opinion, honestly, I don't know. But I don't think that we could reasonably discount the possibility, given the sure knowledge that the government does a lot of shady stuff, that this very well might be a human-produced artifact, and that we've just maybe thought about it in the wrong way in terms of why and how we could have such a huge silent craft. Maybe something like a giant paper airplane, like I said, that unfolds. There's a lot of different ways that something like this could be made, conceivably, by a human agency and deployed just to find out what the reaction of the people would be.
You know, I do want to believe bad. I'm a conspiracy theorist. I want to believe there's aliens out there visiting us. I want to believe all the woo stuff. I really do. But I also have a mind. I'm halfway intelligent, and I look at things in a scientific way at times. I don't know. I gotta be a camera. I don't know, Kyle. I mean, I've never seen anything this big before. You know, a mile wide, if not more. We have nothing like that in our Air Force, as far as I know. We definitely have nothing like that in our civilian aircrafts. You know, it wasn't flares. We all know that. What better time?
If you stretch out a net very wide, you know, it can fold out to be 100 yards across, but it folds into something the size of a suitcase.
I mean, if I'm an alien force coming down from wherever and I want to visit the Earth, I'm going to do it at nighttime, right? Well, why over a populated city, though? I mean, a few cities, to be honest. I mean, and only 2 aircraft were scrambled by the military, and an object took off fast. A big object took off fast, and these pilots came back scared. And I said during the show, you didn't hear it, Cryo, was one of the guys went on the radio and talked about this. One of the pilots for the military. The very next day, he was shipped off somewhere else, never to be seen again. And I was told in the forum, in the chat room, LOP chat, that I need to say woo-woo. I guess that's our drinking word. The safe word is woo-woo. But I mean, though, if it is alien in nature, this thing's huge. It's the size of a mothership, basically, you know, and it's checking us out for whatever reason. But I tend to think, though, either it's a top-secret military craft or it is a UFO, because after the sightings happened, at 10 o'clock at night, the military did drop flares. There's 2 different sightings, one of the craft and one of the flares. The first sighting of the craft was at 8 o'clock of the night, when they supposedly dropped the flares from the military at 10 o'clock at night. So what happened during those 2 previous hours, you know, that's a hole in the story there. Then you have the governor being like a clown the next day, saying, I want to get the truth of this, and they have another press conference later in the day, having one of his staff members dressed up like a gray alien, saying, we caught the culprit, you know, just totally discounting what happened and pissing everybody off, basically. So I think this is something that came from outer space. They know what to do about it. How do we cover this up? What better way to cover this up than to do flares? You know, we'll blame on the flares then, you know, and then let the governor act like a fool the next day and try to discredit it some more. So in my opinion, either I don't know what this thing is, or it's a craft of alien origin from another star system. I could be wrong. Maybe I am wrong, but thousands of people seen this object in the skies. It wasn't like 1 or 2 people, like I said before. And Kyle, if you're going to try to discredit something like that, doesn't it sound like a good idea? Dropping flares and then having a fake story the next day. Sounds like a cover-up to me. What do you think?
Well, first off, I'd like to heartily recommend this documentary film called Out of the Blue, in which it gives an interview with the governor. Conference the next day where he brought in the fake Martian. He explains why he did that and why he was just trying to alleviate any fears that people might have had. And he says, you know, I saw this thing. Hundreds of thousands of people saw it. Most of us thought it was an extraterrestrial craft, and we didn't really get any straight answers. I personally think, though, that if it were something that the military did not know about, we wouldn't have just had flares up there. There would be F-16s, Tomahawk cruise missiles. They would have gone full berserk on this thing if they didn't know what it was from the start.
Probably can't shoot down a craft that's a mile long over a populated city, though. You know, and they sent up two F-16s supposedly. You know, it was the unofficial story, or whatever, and the thing took off on them. But I mean, if this thing can travel the stars, if you try to shoot it down, this technology is probably way beyond ours. We probably couldn't touch the thing if we wanted to be honest.
If you made a ship that was miles wide, though, and you launched it out of, you know, your backyard, assuming you have a big backyard, I think that they would shoot it down. I think that they would at least try. They would send some planes, send some missiles. They would do something. And the general lack of response, there was not a huge amount of emergency response on the ground. It didn't really seem to be like anything was happening unless you happen to be looking up at this silent, peaceful craft going over. I think that if it were something they didn't know what it was, they would have scrambled for it. Now, I'm not saying that necessarily means that they didn't understand that it was aliens and let it go, but if it was really a surprise to them, I think that they would have done more than what they did.
I think it was kind of a surprise for them because it didn't show up on the radar at all. I mean, they're probably going, hey, we got this craft in the sky, it's like a mile wide, and what the hell should we do about it? Well, you're right. Every time there's a UFO sighting somewhere, there's always military craft chasing it or trying to chase it, basically. You know, this thing was hovering over Arizona for a while before anything was sent out after it, though. So either they didn't know what to do about it, or they knew about it and figured there's nothing they could do, you know, so they just let it go. Kind of scary, though, if something can come in our airspace a mile wide and nothing's done about it, though, to be honest, you know, and people were talking about that, too. You know, would you let a random aircraft in your airspace all the time? It's kind of bad for a superpower, you know. And the kicker is...
That was Arizona. If it was Nevada back when I was there, the locals would have been shooting at it.
Probably a wise choice to do something like that, though, but yeah, I could see that happening. Or somewhere over LA, you're gangbangers trying to shoot a UFO down. And Scarlet goes in a room and it flew over southern Nevada, too. I think they knew about the thing, but I figured there's nothing damn they could do about it, basically. I mean, usually they try to chase away the smaller UFOs, but this one thing was huge, and they had no clue what to do about it, to be honest. Or, the second option, it was one of our things. One of our aircraft, an experimental aircraft. Perhaps to send out the judge reaction of people if they were ever to do disclosure. Maybe like a test run kind of thing, you know. And this was not the first sighting of this thing either. It also had sightings of this thing in the future too, in 2013 and supposedly 2015. It came back. There's some reports of that. I've never seen that in the news, you know, the Phoenix lights are back, you know, and there are craft in the sky. Oh, it's more flares again. Yeah, let's use a flare card again, shall we? You know, it hasn't been played out enough in every UFO story ever. Chinese lanterns, flares, maybe it was swamp gas, you know. All the lame excuses they give for UFO sightings all the time. But no matter what you believe, it happens. Thousands of people seen it. It was on the national news for a very long time. You know, I remember that watching the national news, like, what the frick? Really? You're actually reporting UFOs on the news for once?
I remember seeing the flares video. I remember it vividly, And I remember how it was very easily debunked against the backdrop of the mountains, and I never saw any video of the actual craft. I remember the flares distinctly, and the media focus was almost entirely on those. But I do think that it's scary that the government would just allow anything that's bigger than what they could deal with to just do whatever it wants, as long as it's not dropping bombs. What if it was a Russian craft, or the Mexican Air Force invading us, or something like that?
Mexico has an Air Force.
If they had just allowed that to come into our airspace because they thought they couldn't really do anything about it, to me that seems kind of cowardly. Something tries to invade my space, my reaction is, hopeless or not, shoot it down.
Angeles in World War II, they tried to shoot that down. Why not this thing? Doesn't make sense, does it, Cryo?
On the other hand, it does kind of look like exactly the kind of thing that if I were exploring another planet or something, this is what I'd want to do. I'd find the bright spots, I'd float over it, take some pictures, see what they do, and then float on my merry way and report back to mothership or whatever. It doesn't really seem out of line for if it were an actual UFO, but I think that there's enough other factors to consider the very strong possibility that this was not extraterrestrial, that this was a human-guided object.
Possible it could be one of ours, though, but we have not seen anything like that since, though. I mean, usually we have something really extraordinary to brag about in our military. It's really top secret, which just probably was because the people who saw this object said it was either no sound or a low hum sound. So it was new technology, a new propulsion system, more or less, So no matter what you believe, like I said, this happened. We all know it's not flares. So either it's a military craft or a alien craft.
What if this is something, it could be something that's done specifically to make a demonstration to other military powers. We're hereby showing the Russians, say, what we've got. Perhaps some of their intelligence agencies had hints of what we had. Say a giant craft that could EMP a city or something that could have massive destructive potential. We can't exactly fly it over Siberia, but we could fly it over, say, Arizona, and the Russians would get the point.
I mentioned to you too, Cryo, during the early part of the show that if you go in some of the mountains region of Arizona or where the tribes used to be, there's pictographs on the stone walls, the rock walls, of these Indians looking at a V-shaped object in the sky. So it's happened in the past too before. What do you think about that?
I don't know. Pictograms tend to be somewhere between works of art and really difficult to see anything but stick figures. I wouldn't put too much into them. They might have been watching geese, they might have been watching aliens. It's really just up to conjecture.
I find it kind of fascinating, though. We got to do everything we can about this, show or whatever, all the facts involved. Little tidbits here and there, it can be a little interesting, basically, I find that kind of fascinating. It could be geese, it could be aliens, it could be anything, basically. But let's be honest here, Arizona's not, any stranger to UFO activity either. Tons of sightings are happening in Arizona of UFOs in the past, and continue to present day. Nothing this big before, though. Not over multiple cities like it did, over a major city, Phoenix, and parts of Nevada. This is an exceptional case. It's one of the biggest UFO cases in America, if not the world, basically, because the number of people who have seen this. So, only a matter of time where something like this happens again. Maybe during daytime, maybe a more populous city like Chicago or New York. How will we react then? Next thing you know, we watch the news, it's lights over New York or lights over Chicago, lights over LA once again. And this is a real phenomenon. maybe alien nature or maybe military, it's going to happen again in the future. What will people think then? Will be explained away by flares? Will be explained away by drones this time? Because there were no drones back then in 1997, at least not officially. So it was a drone formation out, and drones can only go so far. This thing flew the whole state basically, from one end of the state to the other. And Adam wants me to mention the ISS. It wasn't the ISS. It was in the atmosphere. It wasn't in space. But yeah, some people report UFO sightings and they blame it on the ISS. They blame it on flares. So they blame it on multiple things. But how much more explaining away can we do? I mean, eventually we're going to have to come forward, with the president or somebody from the military or the government saying, hey, we're not alone. We've been visited for a very long time. And I think, though, that when you watch your movies and your shows, and you see a pattern where they slowly introduce more alien stuff over the years, more UFO sightings, more UFO lore in shows and movies, trying to prepare us for this. I firmly do believe that. I mean, you see alien stickers everywhere, the grays, I want to believe, and I think they're slowly preparing us for disclosure, to be honest. I think we've known about aliens for some time, and Cryle has something we should add to this conversation, so go ahead.
If it were drones, then why did numerous people report that they couldn't see any stars in the space occupied by the triangle? It seemed to most of the people who witnessed it, or at least the ones who I've seen interviewed, that they were pretty sure it was at least a two-dimensional object. But let's just say that one landed, or they say that one landed on the White House lawn, spoke to the president. He comes on CNN and says, hey, everybody, there's aliens out there. The only pattern that I've seen with the government that's been really consistent is mountains of BS. Would we really believe them if they started telling us that there were aliens out there and that they were visiting us?
Like a Project Bluebeam situation, more or less, Yeah, we have somebody's lives for the year, they don't know what to believe anymore. I personally believe there's going to be disclosure, but it won't be by the government. It'll be by a UFO fleet coming down upon the earth and saying, hey, we're here. Let's talk. Let's have a dialogue. That's what I firmly believe, that eventually we're not going to be one disclosing it. It's going to be aliens coming down and say, hey, we've been watching you guys for a while. We want to have a disclosure with you guys. We want to be friends with you guys. We want to help you guys. Or they want to take us over and use slave labor or whatever, And Bug Out Girl says Chinese lanterns, weather balloons. Yeah, it's always explained by some bullshit, basically, about UFOs. I like once for the government to say, we don't know what it was. Maybe it is alien nature, but they always explain things away every single time. Look at Roswell. It was a test balloon. It was test dummies. Come on, whatever. And Homer Simpson goes, maybe they want to eat us. Could be. It could be a food source. You never know. But as I close this show out, I want you to think about all possibilities at all times when you hear about this stuff. Take everything out with a grain of salt. And also realize, too, though, that we're in a big universe full of millions upon millions of stars. And if you think we're the only ones out there, you're very naive. I firmly believe there's tons of life out there, more we could ever possibly imagine. And some of them are way more advanced than us. Yeah, maybe they want to take, stroll in our vicinity and check us out. It's a possibility. At one time, they were at our level, too. They were trying to see maybe that we have the technology to travel the stars eventually, and our intentions maybe. Right now, we're kind of a hostile race, though, so I'm be kind of less leery about leaving our own safety net and exploring the stars, basically. But you've been listening to Biased Propaganda. Tonight's topic was the Phoenix Lights Revisited. Please join us again next week as we have more fascinating topics. Have a good night.